Argentina assumed the pro-tempore presidency of the Community of Latin American and Caribbean States during the 22nd meeting of foreign ministers of the bloc held in Buenos Aires. Cuba sent a donation of its domestically produced vaccines against COVID-19 to Syria this Friday. President of Kazakhstan, Kassym-Jomart Tokayev, noted the anti-terrorist operations deployed in the face of attacks on public institutions. From the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South, I'm Katrina Goss. We begin in Argentina, which this Friday hosted the 22nd meeting of foreign ministers of the Community of Latin American and Caribbean States and assumed the bloc's pro-tempore presidency. The main points on the agenda were the distribution of vaccines and other joint strategies to confront COVID-19, as well as the economic crisis resulting from the pandemic and the need to promote integration processes in the region. The foreign ministers also referred to the need for solidarity among member states and the importance of education and communication as part of the precepts of the bloc. Other identified areas of action going forwards are regional connectivity in transportation and communications, more efficient environmental policies, meeting the Sustainable Development Goals of the 2030 Agenda, the institutional strengthening of CELAC, and greater gender equality, as well as the promotion of dialogue with China, Russia, India, the European Union, and others. And in his closing speech, President of Argentina and pro-tempore President of CELAC, Alberto Fernandez, highlighted the democratic coexistence promoted by the regional organization.
Not created to interfere in the political and economic life of any country. CELAC was born as a forum to our own benefit that has always promoted consensus within a framework of democratic coexistence, without any kind of exclusion.
The Argentine president also expressed his gratitude for the support offered by countries of the region in the negotiations with the International Monetary Fund.
I want to thank you for the support that Argentina has received from all of you in the negotiation that we are carrying out with the International Monetary Fund. I really appreciate it because I need you. I'm much stronger knowing that my Latin America and Caribbean brothers and sisters are accompanying me.
In his opening remarks at the meeting, Mexico's Foreign Minister Marcelo Ebrard referred to the organization's achievements over the past year, despite the challenges posed by the pandemic.
The most tangible result for the population is what was done in the face of the pandemic. The Community of Latin American States and Caribbean States promoted the first United Nations resolution in favor of universal and equitable access to all treatments and medicines. Our voice began to be felt at the global level as we unite, our voice grows louder.
Foreign Minister of Argentina, Santiago Cafiero, stated that it was a great honor to chair the CELAC meeting, given the regional importance of the bloc.
The search for coincidences will be our main commitment. The respect for diversity will be our guiding principles. CELAC is a forum tailored to our region, a region that today we can affirm that is a region of peace. That is why we say that we have much to show and tell the rest of the world. Mechanism of integration and respect and peoples in peace are part of a rich and diverse culture that we have been sustaining based on respect for one another.
Cuban Foreign Minister Bruno Rodriguez stressed the need to maintain cooperation and unity within the framework of the community.
We ratify the will to maintain CELAC as a mechanism of political consultation, genuinely Latin American and Caribbean, and we ratify the commitment with regional integration and the validity of the proclamation of Latin America and the Caribbean as a peace zone.
Bolivian Foreign Minister Rogelio Maita noted the shared struggle of CELAC member states for independence and peace.
CELAC has allowed us to think again as equals and to consider again that we are a territory in which solidarity, respect, frankness in our dealings and words continue to be the values that we inherited 2 centuries ago. That is why we believe that consolidating politics is not only a bet for politics among all those represented here, but also to look to a future in which we will work together to not be mere instruments or pieces of the centers of power.
In his address, Venezuelan Foreign Minister Felix Plasencia highlighted the regional cooperation in the fight against COVID-19.
We take this opportunity to thank the governments of Argentina and Mexico for the cooperation in sanitary matters provided to our region, with a commitment to face the pandemic through the supply of vaccines, and we also appreciate the efforts made by the government of Cuba in its work for the production of 3 vaccines to combat COVID-19.
Nicaraguan Foreign Minister Denis Moncada stressed the ongoing struggle against human rights violations and for the respect for regional sovereignty.
We accompany the struggle for human rights in any part of the world, respecting each country's own affairs. We cannot and should not stop complaining about the crimes, tortures, violations and disappearances that are committed every day in so many countries of the world, and that constitute atrocities, crimes and violations of human rights. We cannot lose sight of the disastrous consequences of drug trafficking and organized crime in terms of human rights, nor of the human tragedy that migration represents.
The Foreign Minister of Belize called on member states to recommit to the community's founding aims.
Therefore, I call for a genuine region-wide recommitment to the vision and purposes of CELAC as outlined in our foundational declaration of 2011. The challenges we face today are no less daunting and no less difficult than the struggles for liberation, for independence, for self-determination of the 19th and 20th centuries. Then, as now, political solidarity and regional integration are the best modalities for achieving the sustainable development with economic, social, and environmental justice.
And we'll be right back after this very short break. Don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. Cuba sent a donation of its domestically produced vaccines against COVID-19 to Syria this Friday. Syrian ambassador to Cuba, Idris Maya, expressed the gratitude of his government and compatriots to the Cuban authorities and people for the shipment of 240,000 doses of the Abdala Soberana O2 and Soberana Plus vaccines. He stressed that this contribution to the fight against COVID-19 comes despite the difficulties aggravated by the United States blockade. The diplomat also stated that the Caribbean nation is one of the richest countries in the world in terms of dignity and generosity, which it has always shown in difficult times to help other peoples. Meanwhile, Cuban Deputy Minister of Foreign Trade and Investment, Ana Teresita González Fraga, highlighted that this donation is an expression of the excellent relations between the two nations, noting that the pandemic has demonstrated the need to promote multilateralism, cooperation and international solidarity. Argentina broke its record for COVID-19 infections, approaching 100,000 daily cases as it faces a third wave of the pandemic, driven by the highly infectious Omicron variant. The record of confirmed cases, which comes in the middle of the Southern Hemisphere summer holiday season with tourist resorts full of travellers, has not translated into a similar rise in COVID-related deaths, which totaled 52 over the last 24-hour period. Argentina has accelerated its vaccination campaign in recent months, which started with the Sputnik V vaccine before the AstraZeneca and Sinopharm shots were added, and later the CanSino, Pfizer and Moderna vaccines. According to the Chief of Staff of the Ministry of Health, most of the new cases are mild or moderate and are not putting stress on the health system.
I had COVID 2 weeks ago and I came for a checkup because I have to travel to see if I did not get infected again.
I am with my brother who is positive in my house and he's isolated in a room and I'm living with him. I bring him food, wash his clothes, etc. to avoid contagion because I have to go out to run errands. I have to swab myself.
Brazil's government has seen international condemnation due to its mismanagement of the pandemic and attacks on environmental protection, with far-right President Jair Bolsonaro isolated on the international stage. Our correspondent Andre Vieira brings us a recap of the disastrous policy of the past year.
Last year, Brazil's image abroad was marked by a lack of environmental protection and denialism and mismanagement of the pandemic by Jair Bolsonaro's government. In April 2021, during the Leaders' Summit on Climate, held virtually, Jair Bolsonaro claimed that Brazil was at the forefront of the fight against global warming and that his government had increased investments for the protection of the environment. Historically speaking, Brazil has been an active voice in the construction of the global environmental agenda. I reaffirm this belief today. During 2021, the Ministry of Environment saw its resources cut by 35%. Deforestation in the Amazon hit its highest record, and Ricardo Salles resigned as minister in June under investigation for illegal timber trafficking. 2021 was also the year of the departure of Brazilian Foreign Minister Ernesto Araujo, who resigned in March accused of not acting to seek alliances in the fight against the pandemic and for maintaining an anti-China agenda. During the UN General Assembly in September, Bolsonaro again lied about an environmental protection, and on the podium he defended the use of drugs that studies show to be ineffective against COVID-19. So we see today that Brazil has lost the tradition it had of being a well-liked figure, a well-liked country abroad. In October, the Brazilian president traveled to Italy to participate in the G20 and was welcomed with protests. The participation of the South American president revealed an isolated Brazil and little dialogue with other heads of state. When our president travels, no leader wants to sit down and talk to him. I see this as a really serious problem in Brazil's relationship with the outside world. This trip contrasts with Lula da Silva's tour of Europe in November, where he was welcomed by important leaders of the continent, and the visit to Argentina in December, when the former president found a Plaza de Mayo full of people chanting in support of his return to power.
Went to Europe more than a month ago and nobody wants to be near him. Nobody wants to talk to him. The following week, Lula went there and talked to everyone. He was welcomed by everyone.
Faced with the image of a Brazil governed by the far right, experts warn of a country's importance. Brazil is very important in the international arena, regardless of the government in power. I think there is a certain shared feeling, perhaps stemming from an optimism in foreign policy, that Bolsonaro may be something temporary, something fleeting. The country is currently experiencing its largest exodus in history. In 2012, 1.9 million Brazilians were living abroad. Today, 4.2 million have migrated to other nations.
André Vieira e Sebastião Soto, TeleSUR, Rio de Janeiro, Brasil.
The final preparations are underway in the Venezuelan state of Barinas ahead of the election of the governor this Sunday. After the close of the election campaign, the National Electoral Council confirmed the full deployment of voting machines and other materials, as well as the security provided by the armed forces. The state elections see a total of 30 registered candidates for governor of Barinas after the electoral chamber of the Supreme Court of Justice ordered a repeat of the vote held in November. And we have more stories coming up after this final short break. Stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. The government of Kazakhstan announced that it will continue anti-terrorist operations in the face of destabilizing acts. Our correspondent Edith Diaz brings us the details.
Hello, colleagues. Thanks for the contact. The president of Kazakhstan, Kassym-Jomart Tokayev, declared that the anti-terrorist operations will continue until the total defeat of those involved in the destabilizing actions, who continue to attack the security forces with weapons and damage public property. The president addressed the nation and said that the masterminding of terrorist attacks by underground cells went unnoticed by the state. According to the head of the state, the National Security Committee and the Attorney General's office are already investigating the existence of a command headquarters which organized and led the act.
Welcome back to From the South. The government of Kazakhstan announced that it will continue anti-terrorist operations in the face of destabilizing acts. Our correspondent Edith Diaz brings us the details.
Hello, colleagues. Thanks for the contact. The president of Kazakhstan, Tokayev, declared that the anti-terrorist operations will continue until the total defeat of those involved in the destabilizing actions, who continue to attack the security forces with weapons and damage public property. The president addressed the nation and said that the masterminding of terrorist attacks by underground cells went unnoticed by the state. According to the head of state, the National Security Committee and the Attorney General's office are already investigating the existence of a command headquarters which organized and led the acts, and those involved in the incident which caused death, numerous wounded, and significant material damage. Tokayev also said that about 20,000 extremists were involved in the violent riots in the city of Almaty, the former capital of the country, during recent days. The Kazakh president also explained that the joint peacekeeping contingent arrived for a short time to help restore constitutional order. In his speech on Friday, Tokayev denounced that the professional ideological subversion behind the recent disturbances is skilled in spreading misinformation and false news can be seen. As a result of the clashes, 18 security officers lost their lives and 748 were injured in the riots. The Ministry of Interior reported that 26 armed individuals were killed, 18 others were injured, while more than 30,700 people were detained in recent days. We will of course continue to follow the events. Back to you in the studio.
Chinese President Xi Jinping on Friday sent a message of support to Kazakh President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev over the recent large-scale riots in Kazakhstan. Noting that the riots have caused heavy casualties and property losses, President Xi expressed his sincere sympathies and noted that President Tokayev has taken decisive and effective actions at a critical moment, quickly calming the situation, which has shown his sense of responsibility as a statesman in protecting the country and the people. Xi also underlined that China firmly opposes any force undermining Kazakhstan's stability, threatening the country's security and sabotaging the peaceful life of the Kazakh people, and rejects any attempt by external forces to provoke unrest and instigate a color revolution in Kazakhstan. Iran continues to work to restore the 2015 nuclear deal in the ongoing talks with Western powers in Vienna. Russia's permanent representative to the international organizations in Vienna, Mikhail Yulinov, who heads the country's delegation to the talks, stated that the intensive work on restoring the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action on Iran's nuclear program continues. The Russian official held 3 separate meetings on Wednesday, the first aimed to discuss the main issues to be settled during the negotiations with Iran's chief negotiator, Deputy Foreign Minister Ali Bagheri. The talks to restore the deal in its original form resumed on December 27th. The parties to the talks, that is Russia, the United Kingdom, Germany, China, France and Iran, agreed to accelerate the process to reach an agreement, expected by February. China is pushing ahead with its ambitious space program. The country approved the 4th phase of its lunar exploration project, which includes the construction, together with Russia, of a scientific research base on the moon within the next decade. Our correspondent Ramzi Parasa brings us more details on this and other news in the Asian region.
China is moving forward with Russia on plans to build a scientific exploration base at the moon's south pole in the next decade, forging an alliance that will compete with the Getaway project of the United States and its allies. China has already approved the 4th phase of its lunar exploration program, which includes building the facility with Russia. The China National Space Administration said that cooperation with Moscow and other countries is vital to advance the project and will lay a solid foundation for research into lunar resources and the lunar environment. Beijing also announced that it will continue its lunar exploration program with the launch of 4 new missions in the near future. China and Russia signed an agreement in March last year for the construction of the International Lunar Research Station, which will compete with the Permanent Getaway Outpost, which NASA plans to build together with the European Agency, Japan and Canada, and in which neither Beijing nor Moscow are included. Chinese experts believe that if this project is successfully completed, China will not be far off achieving a manned landing on the moon. China has maintained a strong interest in space exploration since the first decade of this century, and it has been its priority for several years. In fact, the Asian nation has already made important achievements, such as placing a rover on the so-called dark side of the moon, collecting samples from the Earth satellite, sending a probe to the planet Mars, and building its own space station. In other news, the Democratic People's Republic of Korea confirmed that it successfully tested a hypersonic missile, the second test of this type of missile in Pyongyang, which is faster, more agile, and harder for air defense systems to intercept. Officials said these hypersonic missile tests are strategically aimed at modernizing the country's armed forces to respond to growing threats and the changing international situation. Meanwhile, in India, new cases of COVID-19 are rising sharply, signaling the arrival of a third wave of infection in the Asian country. India now has more reported than 35 million cases of the coronavirus, and in the last week, the daily number of positive cases has risen from 10,000 to more than 50,000, marking the accelerated pace of the spread of the virus that coincides with the entry of the new Omicron variant in the country. That's the picture on this side of the world. We'll be back with more news from Asia in the coming days.
And we've come to the end of this news brief, but remember you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also follow us on social media for all the latest news. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram and Telegram. For TeleSUR English, I'm Katrina Goss. Thank you for watching.